Have you ever had one of those days where everything feels like it's spiraling out of control? Maybe you woke up late, spilled coffee on your shirt, then got stuck in traffic only to arrive at work and realize you forgot an important deadline. The frustration builds, your heart races, and before you know it, you're snapping at the people around you or drowning in stress. We've all been there. Emotional turbulence doesn't discriminate. It can derail anyone's day, no matter how put together they seem. But what if there was a way to navigate these moments not with panic or resentment, but with clarity and calm? That's where Stoicism comes in. 2,000 years ago, the Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." At its core, Stoicism isn't about suppressing emotions. It's about mastering the way we perceive and respond to them. Think of it as an ancient toolkit for modern chaos, a way to reframe challenges, step back from reactive impulses, and cultivate unshakable resilience. Imagine facing that chaotic day not with dread, but with a sense of steady purpose. Instead of being swept away by frustration, you'd pause, assess, and choose how to move forward with intention. That's the transformative power of Stoic practice. In this video, we'll explore practical strategies from Stoic philosophy that you can use to handle emotional turbulence with grace. You'll learn how to detach from the noise of instant reactions, reframe obstacles as opportunities, and build a mindset that thrives under pressure. This isn't about becoming emotionless, it's about becoming unbreakable. Whether you're dealing with daily irritations or deeper setbacks, these timeless principles will help you find your footing. So if you're ready to trade overwhelm for calm and reaction for resilience, you're in the right place. Let's begin. Take a moment to ask yourself this blunt question. Why pour your precious energy into things you have no power to change? That's the heart of what Stoics call the dichotomy of control, one of the most liberating ideas you'll ever apply to daily life. Imagine you're on a ship in the middle of a storm. The wind howls, waves crash, but here's the key. Your job isn't to stop the storm, it's to steer the rudder. The ancient Stoic teacher Epictetus used this exact metaphor to show the difference between what's in your hands and what isn't. The weather, not up to you. But how you angle the sail, how you adjust your course, that's where your power lies. Now translate that to modern life. You're stuck in traffic, late for a meeting. Horns blare, your frustration spikes, but ask yourself, can you magically clear the highway? No. What you can control is whether you let that tension tighten your shoulders or hijack your mood. You can choose to turn on a podcast, take deep breaths, or use the delay to mentally rehearse your presentation. That shift from resisting reality to working with it is the essence of Stoic resilience. Here's a challenge. Grab a pen and list 3 things stressing you right now. Got them? Now cross out anything that falls outside your influence. A coworker's attitude, flight delays, yesterday's missed opportunity. Feel that the moment you stop wrestling with the unchangeable, you free up energy for what truly matters, your next move. The Stoics didn't preach apathy, they taught focus. By cutting the cords to uncontrollables, you're not giving up, you're gearing up. Less chaos, more clarity. Less reaction, more response. That's how you turn turbulence into traction. Seneca once wrote, "Fate leads the willing, the unwilling it drags." That simple line holds the key to one of Stoicism's most transformative ideas, Amor Fati, the love of fate. It's not about passive resignation or gritting your teeth through hardship. It's about actively embracing whatever life throws at you, not as a setback but as fuel for growth. Think of Nelson Mandela, imprisoned for 27 years. He could have drowned in bitterness. Instead, he later said those years sharpened his purpose, teaching him patience and strategy. The bars didn't change, his perspective did. That's Amor Fati in action, turning even the harshest circumstances into stepping stones. Now, consider how this applies to your life. Maybe you've faced a job loss, a health scare, or a relationship ending. The instinct is to fight it, to replay the "why me" script on loop, but resistance magnifies suffering. What if instead you asked, how could this reshape me for the better? A lost job might push you toward a passion you'd ignored. An illness could deepen your gratitude for small moments. Even daily frustrations, a cancelled flight, a rude coworker become chances to practice patience or assert boundaries. The Stoics didn't see fate as a cruel master, but as a wise teacher. Here's a practical challenge. Pick one current struggle, something that's been weighing on you. Now reframe it. Ask, what's this teaching me? Where could it lead if I stopped resisting? Maybe that argument revealed a boundary you need to set. That project failure exposed a skill to improve. When you stop seeing life's twists as personal attacks and start seeing them as collaborators in your growth, everything changes. Fate isn't happening to you, it's happening for you. The question isn't whether you'll face storms, but whether you'll learn to dance in the rain. What if you woke up tomorrow to find your bank account empty, your closest friend betrayed your trust, or the project you poured months into collapsed publicly? These aren't just morbid hypotheticals, they're the heart of Premeditatio Malorum, the Stoic practice of premeditating adversity. Seneca called it rehearsing tragedy in advance, not to dwell on fear but to disarm it. Picture a fire drill. When alarms sound, you don't panic. You move with purpose because you've mentally walked through the steps 100 times. That's the power of this exercise. By willingly visiting your worst-case scenarios in your mind, you strip them of their shock value and uncover your own capacity to endure. Take public speaking, a fear so common it outranks death for some. Imagine stepping on stage, your mind blank, the audience shifting uncomfortably. Now pause. Instead of fleeing that mental image, sit with it. What's the real cost? Embarrassment, a bruised ego. The Stoics would argue those are fleeting discomforts, not catastrophes. Now flip the script. Visualize recovering, cracking a joke to reset the room, simplifying your message, or even bowing out gracefully. Suddenly, the monster under the bed looks smaller. You've proven to yourself that even if the worst happens, you'll adapt. Here's how to put this into action today. Carve out 2 minutes. Pick one fear, maybe a difficult conversation, a career risk, or a health concern. Close your eyes and walk through the scenario in vivid detail. Feel the tension, the setback, then watch yourself navigate it. What resources would you tap? Who could support you? How might this reshape your priorities? The goal isn't to manifest disaster, it's to reveal your resilience. As the Stoics knew, the more familiar adversity becomes in your mind, the less control it holds over your heart. Zoom out. How will this matter in 10 years? Imagine looking down on your life from space, watching tiny humans scurry about their daily dramas. That's the essence of the Stoic view from above, a mental shift Marcus Aurelius used to dissolve pettiness. He'd write in his journal about the fleetingness of human squabbles, how even emperors become forgotten dust, how cities crumble to nothing. Picture someone ranting online about a minor slight. Now pull back the camera. In the grand sweep of history, does that tweet matter? Does your coworker's snide comment? This isn't about dismissing real pain. It's about recognizing how much of our suffering comes from magnifying molehills into mountains. Think of Earth as a pale blue dot in the cosmos, a single pixel in a universe of billions of galaxies. Your looming deadline, that awkward encounter, the disappointment you're replaying on loop, how do they look from that vantage point? The Stoics called this cosmic humility, a reminder that we're brief visitors to an ancient planet. Social media thrives on manufactured urgency, hot takes, outrage cycles. But what if you stepped off that treadmill? Imagine your current stressor as a scene in a movie. Now fast forward to the credits. Would it even make the final cut? Try this tonight. Step outside and stare at the stars for 5 minutes. Let the sheer scale of things silence the noise in your head. The Roman philosopher Seneca practiced this daily, writing, "Does it really matter what part of the earth you stand on if all of it looks the same from space?" Your anxieties aren't trivial, but they're temporary. The view from above doesn't erase problems. It puts them in their rightful place, so you can save your energy for what truly endures. Your favorite mug slips from your hands. You hear the crash before you see the pieces. That first sip of morning coffee you love, gone. It's a small loss, but for a split second it stings. Now amplify that feeling. What if it wasn't just the mug, but the ability to taste at all, or the person who usually sits across from you at the breakfast table? This isn't macabre, it's negative visualization, a Stoic exercise Epictetus called remembering that everything is on loan. By temporarily imagining the absence of what we cherish, we reawaken to its value. The coffee isn't just caffeine, it's warmth, ritual, a quiet moment before the day's chaos. The colleague who annoys you, picture their empty chair. Suddenly, even their quirks feel like proof of life's messy aliveness. History gives us striking examples. The Roman statesman Cicero wrote of a custom at lavish feasts. Servants would carry skulls around the dining hall, whispering, "Remember, you must die." Morbid, maybe, but also clarifying. When jazz legend John Coltrane survived a near-fatal overdose, he described waking up with new ears, hearing music as if for the first time. That's the paradox of confronting loss. It sharpens your senses. The Stoics weren't preaching gloom, they were hacking gratitude. You don't need a crisis to feel this. Try it now. Pause this video, look around. Pick one thing you'd miss if it vanished: the hum of your fridge, your dog's weight against your leg, the view from your window. Sit with that "what if" for 10 seconds. Feel how your breath deepens, how your shoulders drop. That's the alchemy of negative visualization. Loss imagined becomes gratitude embodied. Here's your challenge tonight. As you brush your teeth, mentally erase the toothbrush. Feel the frustration of foam-less gums, the dull film on unscrubbed teeth. Then pick up the real brush and notice the bristles, the mint, the simple luxury of cleanliness. Epictetus said, "He robs present ills of their power who has perceived their coming beforehand." By rehearsing absence, you disarm taken for grantedness. Your spouse's laugh, your working legs, the skyline you barely glance at anymore. All of it borrowed, all of it fleeting. The Stoic doesn't dwell on doom. They sip their coffee like it's the last cup, knowing that one day it will be. And in that awareness, they find something unexpected. Not fear, but a fierce, quiet joy. Not events, but judgments disturb us. That simple line from Epictetus holds the key to one of Stoicism's most powerful practices, the discipline of Ascent. Picture this: someone cuts you off in traffic and instantly your body tenses. Your thoughts race. How rude, they did that on purpose. But here's the twist: the car swerving wasn't the problem. It was the story you told yourself about it. The Stoics saw this clearly. Pain comes not from what happens, but from the labels we slap onto events the moment they occur. Marcus Aurelius put it bluntly in his Meditations: take away your opinion about what seems to give you pain, and you stand tall. That's the art of stripping narratives from facts. Imagine your coworker sends a terse email with no pleasantries. Your first instinct: they're angry at me. But what if their toddler kept them up all night? What if they were racing to a meeting? The event, the email is neutral. The judgment, the meaning you assign, is where suffering breeds. This week, try a radical experiment. For 24 hours, become a detective of your own thoughts. When you catch yourself labeling something as bad, a delayed train, a critical comment, pause. Ask, what's the raw fact here? What story am I adding? That space between event and reaction is where freedom lives. Like training muscles, the more you practice withholding automatic judgments, the stronger your clarity becomes. The rude comment isn't a dagger, it's just words. The traffic jam isn't a personal attack, it's cars. The Stoics didn't ignore reality. they mastered the alchemy of transforming poison into paper. A storm rolls in, dark clouds swallow the horizon, wind whips through the trees, rain lashes the ground. From one angle, it's chaos, but step back, that storm is part of something vast and intricate. It waters the soil, clears old branches, shapes landscapes over centuries. The Stoics called this sympatheia, the invisible threads binding everything into a single, pulsing web. Nothing exists in isolation, not even our emotions. When frustration flares in traffic or tension knots your shoulders during an argument, you're not just reacting to a moment, you're part of a dance far larger than yourself. The philosopher Hierocles pictured this interconnectedness as a series of concentric circles. At the center, you, the next ring, family, then friends, community, strangers, all the way out to humanity itself. The practice: draw those distant circles inward. The co-worker who snapped at you isn't just a name on an org chart. They're someone's sleep-deprived parent, a person carrying worries you can't see. Marcus Aurelius would scribble reminders like this in his journal. When someone offends you, ask what pain or ignorance drives them. It's not about excusing hurtful behavior, but about dissolving the illusion of separateness that magnifies conflict. Think of the last time someone cut you off in a meeting or took credit for your idea. The heat of that moment makes it easy to paint them as a villain. But what if you zoomed out? Maybe they're insecure, desperate to prove themselves. Maybe they learned that behavior in a cutthroat environment. This isn't about being a doormat, it's about wielding empathy as a superpower. When you see others as flawed, striving humans rather than obstacles, something shifts. The anger doesn't vanish, but it loses its jagged edge. Here's a challenge. Pick one recent frustration, a rude comment, a bureaucratic delay. Trace it back like a detective. Who else was involved? What pressures might they be under? How many hands touched that problem before it reached you? The barrister who messed up your order might be juggling rent and night classes. The slow-moving client could be paralyzed by their own fear of failure. Sympatheia doesn't mean you ignore problems, it means you address them with clarity instead of contempt. Watch how nature handles imbalance. A forest fire isn't tragedy, it's renewal. A flood carves new paths. The Stoics saw human conflicts the same way, not as personal attacks, but as friction in a system meant to grow us. Next time tension rises, pause. Breathe. See if you can spot the hidden threads connecting you to the person across the table. The goal isn't perfection, it's recognizing that every outburst, every misunderstanding is just storm weather in the vast ecosystem of us. What if your diary wasn't just a place to vent, but a mirror held up to your own wisdom? Marcus Aurelius didn't scribble in his journal to complain, he wrote to converse with his highest self. The meditations weren't meant for publication. They were raw, unfiltered dialogues with his own soul. Picture the most powerful man in Rome, hunched over parchment by candlelight, dissecting his flaws and reforging his purpose. That's the heart of Stoic journaling, not recording events but interrogating them. Your worst day could become your greatest teacher if you know how to ask the right questions. Let's break it down with a modern case study. Imagine your boss publicly criticizes a project you spent weeks on. Your face burns, your stomach knots, classic fight or flight. Most journals would trap that reaction in amber. I'm humiliated, my boss is unfair. But Stoic journaling flips the script. Step 1. What upset me? Name the raw emotion, not "my boss was rude," but "I felt devalued when my effort went unrecognized." Already, the monster shrinks. Step 2. What's within my control? You can't erase the comment or dictate your boss's tone, but you can request constructive feedback tomorrow, revise the work, or even examine if your self-worth is too tied to external validation. Step 3. The game changer. How would my best self respond? Not the prickly, defensive version of you, but the calm, principled person you aspire to be. Maybe they'd acknowledge the critique without crumbling, then ask, What would make this stronger? That shift from victim to student is where growth lives. Here's your 5-minute nightly challenge. Grab any notebook, no fancy pens required. First, jot down one friction point from your day. Not the superficial, traffic was awful, but the deeper itch. I resented my partner for not helping with dishes. Next, play control detective. Circle anything truly in your hands, your tone asking for help, your choice to clean silently while stewing, even your decision to prioritize a spotless kitchen over peace. Finally, script a rewrite. How would the most resilient version of you handle this tonight? Maybe they'd laugh and say, dishes aren't a moral failing, or start a light-hearted chore chart. The magic isn't in the solution, it's in the act of stepping outside your reactive self and tapping into inner clarity. Marcus wrote, dig within. Within is the wellspring of good. Your journal isn't a confession booth, it's a forge. Every frustration is ore waiting to be smelted into wisdom. The boss's critique becomes a lesson in detachment from praise. The piled-up dishes, a reminder that love isn't measured in spotless countertops. Stoic journaling doesn't erase life's stings, it gives you the tweezers to remove their barbs. Tonight, don't just recount your day, cross-examine it. The verdict you're after isn't who's right, but what's true. And in that truth, you'll find something unexpected, not just calm, but power. Your breath is your remote control for calm, always with you, always free, and more powerful than we often realize. When emotions surge like a storm, your breath becomes the anchor keeping you steady. The Stoics understood this centuries ago. Epictetus, who lived with a leg permanently chained from slavery, taught his students to confine yourself to the present moment. Not tomorrow's worries, not yesterday's regrets, just the air filling your lungs right now. That's where the 4-4-4 technique comes in. Inhale for 4 counts, hold for 4, exhale for 4. Simple, yes, but when practiced, it rewires reactivity. Each cycle is a silent reminder. You're not your racing thoughts, you're the space between them. Consider the physiology of panic. When stress hits, your heart pounds, your vision tunnels, and your brain screams danger. But deliberate breathing flips the script. It signals safety. Picture a Navy SEAL before a high-stakes mission, perched on the edge of a helicopter. Bulletproof vests and tactical gear can't steady a shaking hand, but breath can. One SEAL described his ritual: 4 counts in through the nose, 4 holds, 4 out through the mouth. By the 3rd round, the mission isn't smaller, my focus is bigger. That's Stoicism in action. The chaos hasn't changed, the response has. Now think of your own triggers: the email that makes your jaw clench, the criticism that knots your stomach. What if, instead of spiraling, you tapped that pause button, not to avoid the emotion, but to meet it with clarity? Next time tension rises, try this: freeze. Drop your shoulders, breathe 4-4-4 while silently naming 3 things you see: your desk, your hands, the light through the window. Suddenly, the emotional wave isn't crashing over you, you're observing it from the shore. The Stoics didn't eliminate storms, they learned to sail through them. Your breath isn't just oxygen, it's the first word in the sentence: I choose how this ends. Marcus Aurelius scribbled a line in his journal that still echoes 2,000 years later: the impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. At first glance, it sounds like cryptic philosophy, but unpack it, and you'll find one of Stoicism's most practical tools. Picture Thomas Edison in his lab, surrounded by thousands of failed prototypes. A reporter once asked how it felt to waste years on dead ends. His reply: I didn't fail. I discovered 10,000 ways that didn't work. Every melted filament, every flickering dud was a stepping stone to the light bulb. The obstacle failure wasn't a wall, it was the path. Now zoom into your life. That job application rejected. It might have spared you a toxic workplace. The relationship that ended. It could be making space for one that aligns with your values. Even small frustrations, the cancelled flight, the missed promotion, are raw material waiting to be reshaped. The Stoics didn't see setbacks as punishments, they saw them as chisels carving out better versions of us. When the Roman general Cotto's political campaign was sabotaged, he didn't crumble. He plastered the city with posters listing his opponent's corrupt deals, turning the attack into a platform for transparency. The impediment became his megaphone. Here's the pivot: ask not, why is this happening to me, but what is this happening for me? A startup founder I know framed every rejection letter from investors and hung them on her office wall. At first they stung, then she noticed a pattern: the same concerns kept arising. Those no's became a free focus group, guiding her to refine her pitch until the right yes appeared. That's Stoic alchemy, taking the lead of disappointment and turning it into gold. So grab a pen. Think of one recent setback, a plan that fell through, criticism that stung. Now flip it. How could this be a forced upgrade? Maybe the rejected proposal exposed a gap in your skills, nudging you to learn something new. Perhaps the friend who ghosted you revealed a one-sided dynamic you'd been ignoring. The obstacle isn't just blocking your way, it's pointing you toward a better one. Edison didn't just invent the light bulb, he reinvented failure itself. Your turn. What looks like a dead end might just be a detour to higher ground. The next time you hit resistance, hear Marcus whispering from the past, "The fire hardens the sword." The obstacle isn't the enemy, it's the training. Your job isn't to avoid the grind, it's to let it sharpen you. That email in your drafts, the dream you're scared to chase, even the daily grind you resent, each holds a hidden invitation. The impediment isn't in your way, it is the way. Now the only question left is, will you walk it? Seneca once wrote that life isn't short, we just make it seem that way by wasting it. Think about that for a second. How often do you end a day feeling exhausted, yet when you look back, it's a blur of emails, half-finished tasks, and distractions that left no real mark? The Stoics weren't against hard work, they were against motion without meaning. There's a brutal difference between being busy and being purposeful. One drains you, the other fuels you. Picture two builders. One spends his days stacking bricks at random, the other lays each stone with the blueprint of a cathedral in mind. Both are working hard. Only one is building something that lasts. This is where the Stoic approach to time flips modern productivity on its head. Most of us live in the urgent quadrant, racing to put out fires, responding to demands, reacting instead of creating. But the Stoics lived in the important. Marcus Aurelius didn't journal because it was urgent. He did it because it clarified his character. Epictetus didn't teach philosophy to meet a deadline. He did it to shape lives. The modern urgent vs. important matrix would have made sense to them. Urgent tasks shout, important tasks whisper. And if you're not careful, you'll spend your whole life answering shouts while the whispers, the things that actually define your legacy, fade into the background. Procrastination is the perfect example of this imbalance. We delay writing that book, calling that old friend, or starting that health habit not because we're lazy, but because we've mistaken urgent for essential. The Stoics would call this a failure of perspective. That inbox you keep refreshing, in 50 years will it matter? That meeting you're dreading, it's a blip. But the hour you spend reading to your child, the walk you take to clear your mind, the project you start that aligns with your deepest values, those are the bricks of your cathedral. Here's the challenge: grab a sheet of paper and divide it into 4 squares: urgent and important, urgent but not important, important but not urgent neither. Now take last week and plot where you spent your time. Be honest. How much landed in that quiet but mighty, important but not urgent box? The one that holds your long-term growth, relationships, and purpose. If it's sparse, you're not alone. But the Stoics would tell you this is the quadrant where life is truly lived. So tonight, ask yourself, what 3 tasks would make tomorrow meaningful if you did them first? Not the loudest tasks, the ones that resonate with who you want to be. Maybe it's finally drafting that first page of your novel instead of scrolling social media. Maybe it's that tough conversation you've avoided because it's easier to stay busy than to be brave. Seneca said we act as if life will never end, yet waste time as if we have none. The fix isn't more hours, it's better lenses. When you start seeing time not as something to fill, but as something to invest, everything changes. The clock isn't your enemy, it's your chisel. And every moment is a choice. Will you chip away at something lasting or vanish into the noise? Speech is silver, silence is golden. That ancient proverb could have been ripped straight from Seneca's journals. The Stoic philosopher once wrote, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality, and chatter more than we need to." Think about that the next time you're scrolling social media, fingers hovering over the keyboard, poised to jump into a comment war. Every unnecessary word, every reactive reply drains your energy like a slow leak. Gossip, complaints, online bickering, they're not just noise. They're emotional breadcrumbs you scatter for others to follow, leaving you emptier with each crumb. Social media arguments are the modern equivalent of shouting into a storm. You pour hours into crafting the perfect rebuttal, your pulse racing as you hit post, only to watch the other person double down, their stance hardening like concrete. Seneca saw this play out in Roman forums 2 millennia ago. The more you explain, the less they understand. Why? Because most battles aren't about truth, they're about ego. The Stoics knew silence isn't passive, it's a shield. When you refuse to engage with every provocation, you're not losing ground, you're reclaiming sovereignty over your attention. Here's a radical experiment. Try a 24-hour complaint fast. Not just avoiding gossip, but deliberately withholding every grumble about the weather, the Wi-Fi, the wait in line. Notice what happens. At first, it feels like bottling up steam. But soon you'll catch yourself mid-sigh, realizing how much mental real estate those petty grievances occupied. Silence isn't just the absence of sound, it's the presence of space to hear your own thoughts, to spot the patterns in your irritations, to ask, is this worth my breath? History offers a masterclass in this. When the Carthaginian general Hannibal defeated Rome at Cannae, senators clamored for immediate counterattacks. But the aged Fabius Maximus stayed silent, letting the panic exhaust itself before outlining a strategy that would eventually turn the tide. His opponents called him cowardly, history called him wise. That's the power of restraint, letting others wear themselves out in the emotional spin cycle while you conserve energy for what matters. So tonight, pay attention to the unsaid. The text you don't send, the jab you don't return, the complaint you swallow. Watch how silence doesn't weaken your position, it deepens it. As the Tao Te Ching says, those who know don't speak, those who speak don't know. Your voice is currency, spend it where it builds, not burns. The next time you're tempted to react, try this instead. Step outside. Listen to the rustle of leaves, the distant hum of traffic. That's the sound of your composure, undisturbed, and in that quiet you'll find something unexpected, not absence but abundance, the kind of strength that doesn't need to announce itself to be felt. When faced with a betrayal, whether it's a friend's backhanded comment or a colleague stealing credit, your first instinct might be to lash out or retreat into resentment. But Stoicism offers a different question to short-circuit that reaction. What would Epictetus do? The Stoic sage wasn't some unattainable myth. They were the embodiment of a simple idea, the best version of a human being, undistorted by ego or impulse. Picture a mental compass always pointing north, no matter how stormy the weather. That's the role of the sage in Stoic practice, a hypothetical anchor to steady you when emotions threaten to pull you off course. Consider the stark difference between reactive and principled responses. Imagine discovering someone you trusted shared a private struggle of yours as gossip. The reactive path, fury, retaliation, maybe even public shaming, but the sage responds differently. Epictetus, who was betrayed by his own slave before gaining freedom, wrote, "Any person capable of angering you becomes your master." The sage asks, does my reaction serve my dignity or diminish it? Will this confrontation repair the breach or simply feed my pride? They might choose silence not as weakness, but as a refusal to let another's actions dictate their inner state. Modern examples abound. When actor Keanu Reeves was asked live on television about a personal tragedy, a blatant attempt to bait emotion, he paused, then replied with quiet grace, "I'd rather focus on the work." No anger, no deflection, just a boundary wrapped in poise. That's sage energy. Or take Serena Williams' response to blatant sexism during a Grand Slam final. Instead of unleashing justified fury, she channeled it into a later interview, using the incident to spotlight systemic bias, turning personal sting into collective progress. Here's your challenge. Pick a recent conflict that still prickles, maybe a family argument or passive-aggressive work email. Now role-play your sage self. How would they breathe before responding? What words would they choose to uphold their values without escalating the drama? The sage doesn't ignore pain, they transmute it. They might say, "I'm hurt by what happened and I'd like to understand." Instead of "how could you?" the shift is subtle but seismic. From accusatory to accountable, from victim to architect of your own peace. Epictetus practiced this daily. When students complained about unfair treatment, he'd ask, "What would Zeus do?" Not because he believed in gods, but because the question forces perspective. Your sage self isn't perfect, they're purposeful. They know the high road isn't about moral superiority. It's about refusing to let pettiness live rent-free in your mind. So next time betrayal stings, don't ask why they did it. Ask what the wisest version of you would do next. That's how you stop reacting to life and start leading it. Evening determines your morning mind, a truth Marcus Aurelius knew well. The Roman emperor ended his days with a simple but profound ritual, reflecting on mortality. Not to dwell on doom, but to clarify priorities, he'd write in his journal, "You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think." Far from morbid, this practice was his reset button. It stripped away the day's trivial worries, reminding him that time spent tossing over petty slights or unfinished tasks was time stolen from rest. Imagine lying in bed replaying an awkward conversation while outside your window stars burn for millennia without notice. That's the perspective Stoic nighttime rituals aim to restore. Not to minimize your struggles, but to place them in a context where sleep becomes a gift, not an afterthought. Modern life has hijacked this wisdom. Scrolling through screens before bed isn't just bad for your eyes. It's a barrage of stimuli your brain must digest like a late-night cheeseburger. Compare that to the Stoic wind down, dim lights, a few lines in a journal, maybe a moment to name 3 things that didn't go wrong today. The roof over your head, the meal that didn't go uneaten, the text from a friend you almost took for granted. This isn't naive positivity, it's neural housekeeping. Gratitude journaling, studies show, lowers cortisol levels more effectively than binge watching ever could. The goal isn't to ignore problems, it's to signal to your nervous system that the world isn't on fire, so it can stand down for the night. Insomnia often masquerades as a sleep disorder when it's really a stress disorder in disguise. The Stoics recognized this centuries before sleep trackers. When you stare at the ceiling at 3 a.m., it's rarely about caffeine, it's about control. Or rather, the illusion of its absence. That's why Epictetus advised students to end each day with a control audit. Not a to-do list for tomorrow, but a clear-eyed review. What truly belonged to me today? Your colleague's snide remark, not yours, the delayed flight beyond your reach, but your patience in traffic, your focus during the meeting, the kindness you showed despite fatigue, those were your currency. This practice does something remarkable. It quarantines the day's chaos, leaving only what you shaped, and in that clarity, rest becomes possible. Try this tonight. Before you reach for your phone, take 5 minutes for a Stoic triage. First, light literally. A dim lamp or candle beats blue light. Next, jot one sentence acknowledging a challenge you faced, followed by one thing it taught you. That argument with your partner, it revealed a boundary you need to voice, the work setback, a nudge to upskill. Finally, ask Marcus's question, if this were my last night, would I waste it worrying? The answer isn't grim, it's freeing. Mortality isn't a threat, it's a spotlight showing you where to aim your energy before you recharge. The sand in the hourglass falls whether you watch it or not. Stoic sleep rituals don't promise more hours, just deeper ones. Tonight, let the stars keep time. Your only job is to surrender to the dark. Anger hits like a flash flood. 1 second you're calm, the next your pulse is pounding, your vision narrows and words fly before you can catch them. Seneca called it temporary madness, and he wasn't exaggerating. That moment when someone cuts you off in traffic and your hand slams the horn, that's not just irritation, it's a mask. Underneath rage is almost always something more vulnerable. Fear of being disrespected, helplessness over losing control, even shame at being overlooked. The Stoics saw anger as a smokescreen, a distraction from the real wound. Take road rage, that universal modern trigger. The other driver's action lasts seconds, but your reaction lingers, white-knuckling the wheel, replaying the insult long after they've driven away. Here's the twist: the anger isn't about the car swerving. It's about the delayed report from your boss, the unpaid bill on your desk, the nagging sense that life's moving faster than you can steer. Anger is the body's faulty alarm system, mistaking a paper cut for a mortal wound. Seneca prescribed a radical antidote, the 10-minute rule. When fury flares, impose a mandatory pause. Not to suppress the feeling, but to interrogate it. In those minutes, ask, what's truly under this heat? Is it really the dirty dishes left in the sink, or the fear your efforts go unseen? The coworker's dismissive comment, or the old insecurity it poked. This isn't about letting others off the hook. It's about reclaiming your own peace. History offers a masterclass in this alchemy. When George Washington's officers urged him to seize power after the Revolutionary War, he didn't just refuse. He handed them his handwritten resignation speech. The man who could have been a dictator chose restraint, turning a moment ripe for ego into a legacy of humility. That's the power of delay. It transforms reaction into response. Tonight, try an experiment. Keep a notepad by your bed. Next time anger sparks, whether at a headline, a family snub, or a misplaced key, jot 3 things: the trigger, the story you told yourself about it, and the quieter emotion beneath. You might discover that the madness Seneca described is really just unspoken grief, frustration, or exhaustion in a costume. Anger isn't your enemy, it's a messenger. The question isn't whether you'll feel it, it's whether you'll let it speak or let it scream. Musonius Rufus, the Stoic teacher whose lectures drew crowds in ancient Rome, put it bluntly: hardship strengthens the mind as labor does the body. At first glance, that might sound like empty, tough love until you consider what modern science reveals about voluntary discomfort. Take cold showers. Studies show brief exposure to cold water spikes dopamine levels by over 200%, while intermittent fasting triggers cellular repair processes. The Stoics weren't advocating misery for its own sake. They were biohackers before the term existed, using deliberate discomfort to rewire their relationship with adversity. Think of your phone buzzing with notifications right now. That Pavlovian itch to check it, that's precisely what Stoic poverty training targets. When Musonius encouraged students to wear simple clothes or eat modest meals, he wasn't promoting asceticism. He was inoculating them against what we now call first world problems, the paralysis that comes when Wi-Fi lags or coffee isn't artisanal enough. A tech executive I know practices this by scheduling quarterly digital peasant weekends. No screens, no delivery apps, just a notebook and whatever food he can prepare from basic ingredients. The first hours feel like withdrawal, he admits. By Sunday afternoon, clarity sharp enough to cut glass. This isn't about romanticizing struggle, it's about reclaiming agency. When you voluntarily skip snacks for a day, you're not punishing yourself, you're proving that the craving doesn't own you. The Roman Stoic Cato would stage public humility exercises, wearing outdated tunics in the Senate to desensitize himself to ridicule. His peers mocked him until crises hit, and they crumbled while he stood unfazed. Modern parallels abound. Navy SEAL train in drown-proofing, floating bound in deep water to confront panic before it confronts them. The principle's identical. Controlled burns prevent wildfires. Try this micro-challenge today. Pick one creature comfort, your afternoon latte, the thermostat set just so, even the skip ads button on videos. For 24 hours, ditch it. Notice the itch, then notice something profound. You're still breathing. The world hasn't ended. That tiny space between desire and fulfillment. That's where resilience is forged. As Musonius taught, it's not the cold shower that transforms you. It's the moment you choose to stay under the water 1 second longer than your instincts demand. Comfort zones aren't meant to be abandoned, they're meant to be expanded, one deliberate discomfort at a time. You could die tomorrow. How does that shift what matters today? That jarring question lies at the heart of memento mori, the ancient Stoic practice of meditating on mortality. Far from morbid, this exercise is a wake-up call to vital living. Seneca put it plainly, you act as if you were destined to live forever. Picture this, you're crossing the street, headphones in, when a car swerves just inches away. For a heartbeat, time stretches, your pulse races, your knees buckle. Then, as the car speeds off, something strange happens. The petty frustrations that weighed you down an hour ago suddenly feel insignificant. That's the raw power of confronting life's fragility. The Stoics didn't see death as a threat, they saw it as the ultimate clarifier. Consider how Steve Jobs approached this. After his pancreatic cancer diagnosis, he famously told Stanford graduates, "Remembering that I'll be dead soon is the most important tool I've ever encountered to make big choices." Jobs wasn't wallowing in doom, he was harnessing urgency. Every no became easier because time, suddenly finite, couldn't be wasted on half-hearted commitments. The Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius kept a skull on his desk, not to dwell on darkness but to spotlight clarity. When we strip away the illusion of endless tomorrows, today's priorities snap into focus. Here's your challenge, grab paper and pen. Write down 3 things you'd do if this were truly your last day, not bucket list grandiosity, authentic priorities. Would you finally have that vulnerable conversation you've avoided? Sit quietly with a loved one instead of scrolling. Create something just for the joy of it. The beauty of this exercise isn't in dramatic gestures. It's in recognizing how much of your ordinary life already holds extraordinary meaning. The morning coffee with your partner, the walk where you actually notice the trees, the project you'd pursue even if no one praised it. These are the threads of a life well lived. A friend of mine survived a skydiving parachute malfunction. His first thought mid-fall wasn't about promotions or possessions. It was regret for all the evenings he'd spent resentfully answering emails instead of playing with his kids. Mortality doesn't ask us to abandon responsibilities. It asks us to audit their true weight. Seneca urged, begin at once to live and count each day as a separate life. Your last day list isn't morbid, it's a mirror. What you'd prioritize if time ran out is likely what you should prioritize now. The clock's ticking, but here's the secret, it always was. The difference is whether you hear it. Imagine waking up one day to find every conversation with your closest friends had been recorded for a month. Not the words, just the emotional residue. What would those tapes reveal? More complaints than solutions, gossip masquerading as bonding, or dialogue that left you lighter, sharper, more aligned with your best self? Seneca wrote over 100 letters to his friend Lucilius, not to pass time, but to polish their minds like swords. Associate with those who will make a better man of you, he urged. Welcome those whom you yourself can improve. Stoic friendship isn't about shared hobbies or mutual convenience, it's about mutual elevation. Consider two types of bonds. First, the transactional, friendships built on proximity, habit, or what you can do for each other. These aren't inherently bad, they're human, but contrast them with virtue-aligned friendships where the glue isn't circumstance but shared commitment to growth. Think of Thomas Jefferson and James Madison. Their letters weren't filled with court gossip. They dissected philosophy, debated governance, and sharpened each other's thinking. Jefferson once wrote that Madison's feedback corrected his reasoning where wrong and confirmed him where right. That's the Stoic ideal, friends as mirrors reflecting not just who you are, but who you're capable of becoming. Now, audit your inner circle with 3 questions. After we talk, do I feel drained or energized? Do our conversations orbit problems or solutions? Would I trust this person to tell me hard truths with love? Be ruthless. A friend who constantly vents about toxic workplaces but never updates their resume might be normalizing stagnation. Another who asks what's next. After your setback is subtly pulling you forward. The ancient Greeks had a term for this selective fellowship, symbiosis, literally living together. Are your symbionts helping you thrive or just coexisting? Here's the challenge. Pick one person who's consistently made you wiser, not smarter, but more grounded, more resilient. Maybe it's the mentor who questioned your assumptions, or the friend who sat with you in silence when platitudes would have rung hollow. Send them a gratitude message today, not generic thanks, but specifics. Remember when you called me out for blaming others? That stuck with me. Seneca would approve. In his letters, he credited Lucilius for showing him his own faults, proving that the highest compliment isn't "you're amazing," but "you helped me see better." True friendship isn't a mutual admiration society. It's a shared dojo where egos get bruised and souls get stronger. Your attention is your life, a truth Epictetus understood long before smartphones existed. He wrote, "If you seek tranquility, do less, not nothing, just less of what pulls you from your purpose." Think about that next time you reflexively unlock your phone during a lull. Your screen time isn't just minutes, it's the raw material of your existence, traded for fragments of content designed to keep you hooked. Modern distraction isn't accidental, it's engineered, with infinite scrolling and notifications tailored to exploit your dopamine triggers like a slot machine for your thumb. The Stoics didn't face Twitter storms or TikTok rabbit holes, but their remedy for mental clutter applies perfectly: ruthless editing of inputs. Consider doom scrolling, those late-night sessions where you consume news like it's your job, yet wake up feeling emptier than before. Seneca warned against a crowd of distractions, comparing unfiltered information to food. Just as you'd reject spoiled meat, you must spit out mental poison. The solution isn't total abstinence, but selective engagement. Try the Stoic scroll rule. For every hour of leisure browsing, spend 5 minutes on something that stretches your mind: a philosophy essay, a language lesson, even a documentary. This isn't about guilt, it's about reclaiming agency. Imagine your attention as currency. Would you spend it all on clickbait or invest some where it compounds? Now take an app audit. Open your phone's settings and check which apps you've used most this week. Does the list reflect who you aspire to be? The Stoics didn't have app stores, but they practiced something radical for their time: intentional poverty. Musonius Rufus urged followers to periodically live without comforts to prove they could. Your version, a digital purge. Delete one app that's pure distraction and replace it with one that nudges you toward growth. Keep the tools, ditch the traps. A tech CEO I admire uses this litmus test. Does this app serve me or do I serve it? If opening it feels like feeding a habit rather than fueling a purpose, it fails. Epictetus said we suffer not from events but from judgments. Your phone isn't the problem. Your unchecked permission for it to interrupt, tempt, and fragment your focus is. Tonight, try this. Charge your phone outside the bedroom. Notice the quiet, that space between stimulus and response. That's where your Stoic practice lives. The notifications will still be there tomorrow. Your attention, though, that's a non-renewable resource. Spend it like your life depends on it, because in the quietest sense it does. Between the spark of provocation and the flame of reaction lies a space, sometimes seconds, sometimes just a fraction of one, where your greatest power lives. Epictetus called it the inner citadel, that unshakable core no external chaos can touch unless you grant it entry. Picture this. You've just received an email that makes your face flush. Maybe it's a passive-aggressive note from a colleague or a client's unreasonable demand. Your fingers hover over the keyboard, itching to fire back. That's the moment. That's the gap, and here's the secret: you don't have to cross it. The Stoics knew what modern neuroscience confirms. Emotions surge fast, but they don't own the steering wheel unless you hand it over. Think of a referee reviewing a play in slow motion. What feels like an unstoppable impulse is actually a series of micro-choices: tightened jaw, clenched fingers, the breath you didn't realize you were holding. The pause button practice is about widening that gap until you can step inside it, not to suppress the feeling, but to meet it with something stronger: intention. Next time email rage strikes, try this. First, 3 breaths in. Inhale through the nose for 4 counts, hold for 4, exhale for 4. This isn't just calming, it's a circuit breaker for the amygdala's alarm. Now, 3 questions. Is this worth my energy? What's the story I'm telling myself here? How would my best self respond? That last one is the game changer. The version of you who isn't rattled by petty conflicts, who chooses battles wisely, what would they do? Maybe they'd draft a reply and save it overnight. Maybe they'd pick up the phone to dissolve the misunderstanding. Or maybe they'd delete the draft entirely, recognizing that some fires burn out faster when you don't fan them. History offers a masterclass in this. When Abraham Lincoln received scathing criticism from his generals during the Civil War, he'd write furious letters, then stash them in his desk unsent. The hot letter technique let him vent without escalating conflict. The Stoic version goes further. It transforms the pause into a laboratory. Every delayed response is an experiment in who you're becoming. Here's your challenge for one day: turn every potential reaction into a mini ritual. The rude comment, the spilled coffee, the slow elevator, each gets the 3-breath, 3-question treatment. You'll notice something startling. Most provocations shrink when you stop feeding them attention. Others reveal deeper patterns worth addressing, not in the heat of the moment, but with the clarity of distance. The pause isn't passivity, it's precision. And in that space between trigger and action, you'll find something Epictetus promised: true sovereignty. Not over the world, but over the one thing that's always yours, your next move. Wealth is needing little, a truth Seneca hammered home while lounging in marble baths his detractors called excessive. The irony wasn't lost on him. Even as Rome's richest philosopher, he penned scathing critiques of luxury, calling it slavery disguised as comfort. Fast forward 2 millennia and our closets bulge with fast fashion. Our screens flicker with targeted ads, and our kitchens stock gadgets that promise convenience but deliver clutter. The modern twist: we've swapped Seneca's gilded chariots for algorithmic dopamine hits, yet the ache remains the same. The more we accumulate, the more we feel owned by our possessions. Consider the capsule wardrobe, a handful of versatile pieces that mix and match effortlessly. At first glance, it's just practical fashion, but look deeper, it's Stoic minimalism in action. Every morning, you're freed from decision fatigue because your choices are intentional, not infinite. Marcus Aurelius could have been describing this when he wrote, "Limit yourself to the few things essential to living well." The magic isn't in owning less, it's in the mental bandwidth reclaimed when you stop juggling excess. A study in the Journal of Neuroscience found that visual clutter competes for attention like a whack-a-mole game you didn't sign up for. Your brain doesn't just see clutter, it processes it, filing each item as unfinished business. That's why clearing your space feels like defragging a hard drive. Suddenly, ideas flow faster and calm settles in. Here's where the Stoic one in, one out rule transforms theory into habit. For every new item entering your life, another must exit. Bought a new book. Donate one, upgraded your headphones, gift the old pair. This isn't austerity, it's curation. Like a gardener pruning dead branches to let the strong ones thrive, you're training discernment. The 16th century samurai Tsunetomo Yamamoto practiced this fiercely, writing, "A man with just one sword knows its soul. When possessions become tools rather than trophies, their worth shifts from status to service." Try this experiment. Pick one drawer tonight, empty it completely. Now hold each item and ask, does this actively serve my best self? Not, could it someday? Or was it expensive? But does it elevate your daily life? The stained T-shirt from college, the charger for a device you no longer own. Thank them, then let them go. What remains isn't deprivation, it's liberation. Seneca warned that poverty adjusted to the law of nature is great wealth. Your version of poverty might look like a tidy shelf, a streamlined schedule, or a phone free from apps that hijack your focus. The goal isn't empty space, it's space for what truly matters. When you stop drowning in things, you start swimming toward purpose. What if you woke up with only what you thanked for yesterday? That simple question holds the power to recalibrate an entire life. Marcus Aurelius began each morning with a ritual we'd now call radical gratitude, thanking fate not for grand victories, but for the mere chance to open his eyes again. When you arise in the morning, think of what a precious privilege it is to be alive, he wrote. Not to be rich, not to be powerful, just to breathe. This wasn't poetic flourish, it was psychological armor. By anchoring his day in thanks for fundamental sight, mobility, a mind that could reason, he inoculated himself against the petty grievances that derail most of us before breakfast. Now picture your own gratitude ladder. At the base, the often overlooked fundamentals, the electricity that brewed your coffee, the joints that let you walk to the window, the lungs that filled with air as you sighed at the alarm. One rung up, the privileges mistaken for entitlements, the job that funds your rent, the friend who texted just to check in. At the top, the unexpected graces, the stranger who held the elevator, the song that shuffled at just the right moment. Gratitude isn't about ignoring life's sharp edges. It's about balancing your gaze so you see the whole landscape, not just the cracks in the pavement. History offers a masterclass in this perspective shift. After surviving a plane crash that killed 72 passengers, psychologist Carl Pillamer interviewed hundreds of elders about life's regrets. Their near-universal refrain, "I wish I'd appreciated more along the way," not the vacations they never took or the promotions they missed, but the ordinary Tuesdays, the shared meals, the quiet walks, the unremarkable moments they assumed would keep coming. The Stoics knew this instinctively. Seneca wrote letters urging his friends to treat every day as a lifetime in miniature, savoring small joys as if they could vanish mid-breath. Tonight, try this before sleep. List 3 unexpectedly specific thanks. Not my family, but the way my kid giggled when the dog stole her toast. Not health, but the ache in my knees after hiking, proof I moved today. This practice does something extraordinary. It trains your brain to spot light in the mundanity. A study in the Journal of Positive Psychology found that participants who journaled just 5 sentences of targeted gratitude for 3 weeks reported significantly less stress. Not because their circumstances changed, but because their attention did. The barking dog becomes a sign of life, not a nuisance, the delayed train, a chance to people watch or think. Gratitude isn't passive, it's alchemical. When Epictetus advised to endure deprivation with gratitude, he wasn't preaching denial, he was highlighting choice. You don't control the world's chaos, but you control what you spotlight within it. Tonight, as you flip off the light, ask, if tomorrow granted only what I named tonight, would it be enough? The answer might surprise you. What feels like an ordinary life is already a mosaic of minor miracles, you just forgot to count them. Chrysippus, one of Stoicism's founding thinkers, supposedly died from laughter after watching a donkey eat his figs. Whether the story's true or just ancient clickbait, it's a reminder Stoics weren't stone-faced ascetics. They understood the power of laughter as a tool for perspective. When Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The best revenge is not to be like your enemy," he could have added, or to laugh at the absurdity of the whole thing. Humor isn't just comic relief, it's a subversive act of detachment. Think of it as emotional alchemy, transforming leaden frustrations into gold with a well-timed smirk. Modern life serves up endless material for this practice. Take politics. A comedian once joked, "I don't need satire anymore, just a live feed of Congress." That's Stoic laughter in action. It's not about ignoring real problems, but refusing to let them hijack your sanity. The cynic scowls at corruption, the Stoic chuckles at the sheer predictability of human folly, then gets to work making change. Even Epictetus, who endured slavery, advised students to see life as a play. Sometimes you're the lead, sometimes an extra, but always free to choose how seriously you take your role. Here's the twist: finding humor in frustration isn't defeatism, it's defiance. When your flight's cancelled for the third time, you could rage at the gate agent or marvel at the cosmic joke of modern air travel. The annoyance doesn't disappear, but its grip on you loosens. Psychologists call this cognitive distancing, stepping outside the drama to see it as a spectator. The Stoics just called it wisdom. Tonight, try this. Pick one recurring irritation, maybe your neighbor's barking dog or the endless stream of password resets. Now imagine it as a sitcom subplot. What's the laugh track moment? The dog isn't just noisy. It's an overzealous security guard yelling, "Intruder alert." At Falling Leaves, the password prompts, a digital Rube Goldberg machine where you jump through hoops just to see your own cat photos. The goal isn't to mock real problems, but to drain their emotional venom. As Chrysippus might have said while possibly choking on fig-related giggles, life's too short not to laugh at the absurd, especially when the absurdity is us. So where does this leave us? Think of everything we've walked through not as philosophy, but as tools, each one forged in the fires of ancient wisdom, ready to be picked up when life feels like a storm. Control, perspective, resilience, these aren't abstract ideas. They're your anchors, the traffic jam you can't clear. That's the practice ground for focusing on what's yours to steer. The criticism that stings, a chance to ask, what's the kernel of truth here? Even the nights when sleep won't come become space to audit what truly belongs to you. Turbulence isn't the exception, it's the rule, but suffering, that's a choice. Epictetus put it plainly, no man is free who is not master of himself. Freedom isn't the absence of chaos, it's the ability to stand steady within it. Picture a dancer mid-spin, perfectly balanced while the world blurs around them. That's the Stoic calm toolkit in action. It's not about silencing emotions, it's about hearing their message without letting them hijack the wheel. Now, here's your move. Don't try to overhaul your life overnight. Pick one strategy this week, just one. Maybe it's the 10-minute rule when anger flares, or journaling tonight to unpack today's friction. Perhaps it's staring at the stars to remember the view from above, or deleting one app that fragments your focus. The key isn't perfection, it's practice. Drop a comment below, tell us which tool you're reaching for and why, because the real work of Stoicism doesn't happen in theory. It happens in the messy, glorious moments when you choose to breathe instead of react, to reframe instead of resent. That's how philosophy becomes lived. That's how calm becomes unshakable. Your toolkit's ready. The storm's coming either way. How